Hello, I'm Everett from Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my classroom. Now today we're going to talk about painting rocks. I'm going to show you a couple ways I painted rocks back here in the studio. But look at my old video. I did a video of plein air on location of painting rocks with watercolors. Take a look at that and see how I did it. I'll be referring to that information. So painting number one, I used a photograph. I did a photograph reference and I did a small painting here in the studio. But painting number two, I changed the composition and I gave myself a little more artistic freedom on how to express painting those rocks. So I want to show those to you. So let's get started. Now this is the photo reference that I used on location. And this is the photo that I used to do a studio painting here to show you. Now let me show you the painting that I came up with. Okay, I was pretty pleased with it from painting what I saw on the photograph. But what happens with a photograph is you become a little more technical and a little more strict on how you paint things. So this turned out to be a fairly decent painting, but it didn't really show the expressions that I really wanted to capture and get the mood a little better. So I've gone ahead and I've designed a second composition. Now this is the value plan. I came up with a second composition. You can see there's a large section of rocks with dark values in the foreground. And in the background I have some middle value rocks. And then I have a horizon line separate the sky and the water. So I'm taking a quarter sheet of watercolor paper and I do a sketch from that value study. And you can see here, I'm going to darken these lines a little bit so you can see how I'm going to do this. Now before I start painting, what I do is I put some words in my head of what I'm going to be doing, how I'm going to do this painting. And first of all, I describe the subject that I'm doing. I'm describing the rocks. They're hard, they're rugged looking, they're rough, they have lots of texture. The color plan I'm thinking about is I'm going to use a variety of colors, but probably I'll be using more cool dominant colors in this painting. The direction, because it's landscape, I'm going to use a horizontal, will be my dominant direction of the painting. Now these are the things I think about before I start actually painting. I really think about the object that I'm painting in terms of a description. And you'll see that when I do my brush strokes. Now first thing I'm going to do is mix up some color. I'll start with the background area. And I'm going to use a middle value, a little yellow ochre, some burnt sienna, and a touch of cobalt blue. This will give me some nice looking grays and a variety of colors. And then I'm going to start painting these background shapes. Putting in the middle value, leave a little white space here and there to go back and fill in later. A little darker color forward here, a little bit dark, give a little variety. Yeah, a nice variety of color. A little texture, a little change. Okay, now in the foreground is going to be a dark value, so I'm going to mix up some dark value. I'm going to put a little bit of ultramarine blue, cobalt, a little more burnt sienna, a little Lutheran crimson, even some quinacridone violet. These are all going to be cool, dark colors, cool. Even a little bit of Hooker green. And royal blue, of course, which is the darkest blue. Okay. Now, I'm using 140-pound cold pressed paper. This is a quarter sheet, and I'm using a 3/4 inch natural hair brush. That's all I'm going to use in this whole painting, is one flat brush. So up here, I'm using those words now: rugged, textured, hard. So I'm making rough, hard edges as I'm thinking along here. I'm using broad strokes. Every time I go to the palette, I change the color. Don't use the same color over and over again. This flat brush works very nicely. Do a little dry brush. Large, big, bold strokes. A variety of color. Remember, I'm thinking rugged. I'm thinking rough. I'm thinking hard. I'm giving it a lot of texture. A little more burnt sienna down here. A little more brown. You can't be timid when you're painting rocks like this. You just got to go in and be bold with your brush strokes. And now on top of that, as the paint's still a little bit wet, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and spray in a little bit of water on top of that. Again, that'll give me even more texture by letting the paint run. Now I left some white paper that can be filled in with shadow patterns and so forth later on. Okay, this is wet, so I'm going to show you a stage that I've completed, which shows you what this looks like when after it's dry. So I'll move this aside. Okay, I have the dark foreground, a middle value, middle ground. Now I'm going to go ahead and put in the sky and the water, the next stage. Give myself a little space here to mix up some sky color. Rinse out the brush, rinsing out the brush. I'm going to pick up a little bit of cobalt blue, maybe a little bit of ultramarine blue. Now I'm going to make the sky mostly blue, but I'm going to start with a darker value at the top, and then I'm going to water it down so it becomes lighter at the bottom. And that's a characteristic of a sky. It's dark at the top and light at the bottom. And again, load up my brush. And I'm going to use horizontal strokes. Go back, fill up my brush. Now as I come down toward the horizon, I want that top part to be a little darker, so I put a little more pigment back up there. As I come down toward the horizon, I'm going to get lighter. So make sure I have plenty of, added more water to the mix. And as I come down to the horizon, I'm going to get lighter and come right across the top of the rocks. Okay, and I'll go ahead and mix up some color for the water. Now the water is going to be blue also. And I'm going to start with, because it's light at the horizon up here in the sky, I'm going to put a little darker value at the beginning. But I'm going to go from a medium value to a dark value coming forward. Again, give me a transition. Now also, because I have texture in the foreground, I need texture in the background and in the sky. And the way I'll do that is, while the paint is still wet, I'm going to take a tissue, I'm going to roll it up, and I'm going to go ahead and make some clouds. And that will give me texture in the sky. Okay. So for unity, I want to have texture in the sky the same way I have texture in the foreground. That's for unity. Now to paint the water, I'm using a little darker color here. I mixed up a little bit of ultramarine, a little bit of blue again. I load up the brush and make sure the flat brush is flat by moving the brush back and forth. Load it up nice, rub it against the edge. Now, let me move the paint just a little bit, and I'm going to use the edge of the brush straight to capture that horizon line. And as I come down, I'm going to leave some white paper here showing, to show maybe some wave action or some water coming through, water coming off the waves. And I come down, I'm going to get a little darker. I'm leaving some white paper to show the action of the water. I come down, stay a little darker, and go right across the rocks. Okay. Now up here, wipe out my brush. I see a little bit of overrun here because the sky has moved into the, and that's not too bad. That's not a real big problem. I come up here with a dry brush, wipe out all the water. And I come up here and I can go ahead and I can wipe off that run up in the top. Let me try it one more time. I have a dry brush that I wipe clean with a towel. Okay. Now, this is going to go ahead and dry. I've gone ahead and done another stage showing this, but what I've done is added the sky and the water on top of the rocks. The next step is to take a look at the final product. Okay, now I have a nice textured rock formation. I added some darks in here to show some of the shadow patterns. I've got a medium value in the background, and the water is going from a medium to a dark value coming forward. Then I've got the texture in the sky. Now, what's interesting about this quarter sheet size painting is I can also show it up on a close-up. First of all, let me put the mat around it before I go ahead and do that. Let me put the mat around. Let me put the mat around before I go too much further. Okay. And I can move the mat up if I want to have less sky. Bring it down a little bit. So that's the completed painting, and I think it turned out very nice. I've got a nice texture. I've got a nice background now, and this is a much more expressionistic view of the scene that I saw with the water and sky. I even put some action out there in the water, which I'll show you in a close-up. There, I can take a larger painting and I can crop it down and make a smaller painting out of it if I wasn't happy with one of the sections or so forth. But here you can see that right here I've added a few little sailboats here in the background for interest. So my impact area, or my area of interest, is right in this area here. It's the darkest dark against the lightest light. And of course another option there would be, another little item there to look at would be those little sails out there, or a symbol of sailboats on the horizon. Okay. Well, that concludes my session today on painting rocks. Also want to remind you, go ahead and subscribe to my channel so you can be informed of future videos that I'm going to put out on YouTube. But what I did today was to show you a couple ways of how I painted rocks. One, I used a photo reference and painted almost directly from the photograph. And the second one, I used a little compositional changes and had a little more artistic freedom on how I could apply my brush strokes and add some more features in the second painting. I hope you enjoyed that. I enjoyed doing it, and go ahead and subscribe again to my channel. And you have a nice day, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.